matter either way.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Gen live stream. We are back after a holiday week last week. We decided it was sure Tuesday was the new Monday for everyone last week, so not a lot of time during lunch probably to catch up on these product and things going on in the space. You might see Greg's screen is frozen at the moment. He is somewhere in Middle Tennessee. I guess this could be an opportunity to pitch Von Lane as a company promo. Yeah. Oh, he'll jump back in a minute. There is a luxury bus line between Nashville and Memphis, Tennessee, and Greg's an strong advocate for Von Lane. It's basically like first class on a bus. But it was really nice. I've joined him on those bus rides. It's really nice, and he likes to work when he's on the go. So, yeah, shout out to Von Lane there. There's just virtually no internet between Memphis and Nashville without a satellite, probably. So,
he's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's definitely better. Some of the trees are moving. You can see the trees moving.
There you go. So. Yeah, there you go.
Are you going to Nashville
or
it's
going to be? Memphis? I'm going to Nashville for a meeting this afternoon, and I'm heading back in the morning.
Oh, nice. Right. Well, safe travels. We'll be doing some traveling next week. Can you hear me? Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, I can. I'm just like the desk with the laptop is bouncing.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm going to make my audience nauseous. People are going to get nauseous. They're trying to figure out what's happening to me.
Yeah.
Small earthquake. It's fine.
You're just bouncing. You're just bouncing in the background.
Bouncy guy.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. It's another edition of our weekly live stream about Gen and any general AI topics. We've been hard at work doing a lot of things behind the scenes. I guess in terms of travel, we do have something, I guess, to highlight at the beginning, which is we'll be at the AILA annual conference next week, it's crazy to think that it's already mid-June. And we're going to be at the conference in style. We'll have a very large booth that we've spent a pretty penny on, but also just our goal was to have as many demo stations as possible, because we feel like when people actually use and interact with the product, it goes a long way. So we'll have, I think, 3 demo stations. 2 will be dedicated to Gen. 1 station will be dedicated to our drafting product, which is something we're also releasing as a Amelie left a comment about commitment to the live stream, Greg.
Yeah, there you go.
Good job. So yeah, we're really excited about the annual conference. We have this new product called Draft, which we have as a separate product at the moment for current Gen subscribers, but it will be tightly integrated into Gen by this time next week. It's in our staging environment. We're really excited about it. So basically when you go and log into your Gen account, you will be able to see a new tab called Drafts. And when you click on Drafts, you'll be able to engage in currently EB1, 01 cover letters and I601A cover letters. As of this week, we've made the I601A cover letter drafting process live as well. Not to say that it's perfect. None of these tools right now are perfect, but we're working on constantly making improvements, meeting with our legal team, getting feedback. And so they have been released into the wild, so to speak. So anyone who currently has access to Draft, you can utilize all those features free at this time if you're a Gen subscriber. So
seeing them all in the same place too makes it a little bit easier for everyone, not having to navigate somewhere else.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest components of this, right, that we had to build in was like the save and continue later. I mean, it's really basic functionality, but these are very large documents. You want to come back to them later and update and revise things. And so those 3 are at least live at this point. I mean, I hesitate to say that we're finished because it doesn't really ever feel like you've arrived, you finished on a feature or a product. But those three are available to users. Then we have the NIW, which will be added shortly after the annual conference. And we'd to hear more about those items that will be, I'm sure, talking about in future live streams about future draft components, draft ideas. We're really interested in getting user feedback, and part of that user feedback, which we actually haven't officially announced yet, Greg, we've had some discussions around it, but I think my thinking is we'll actually have two aspects of this. There will be one activity that will be happening at the AILA, like on site at the AILA conference, and then we'll have one more or less virtual opportunity for folks who are either not at the conference, just not able to participate at the conferences. We're going to start a prompt bounty. So essentially how this works is we've been engaged in sort of like creating this idea, or like thinking through this idea of a community for users. And we recognize that a lot of firms, a lot of users have like their own, interesting prompts, interesting use cases they've created within Gen that we're completely oblivious to, or we may just know about, sparingly, as we've just had various conversations. Anyway, we're going to initiate a prompt bounty, which there will be like actual nice prizes for, and essentially they don't actually even have to be Gen subscribers to participate. Basically, you can provide any type of interesting like use case for Gen or a prompt idea, and we will put it into the sort of group of other prompts that people have submitted, and it will be basically like available for anyone to like upvote, right? So like basically it's going to be a public page where people can like an idea or a concept, and the winner goes the spoils, I guess. So I don't exactly know if we'll have like first, second, third, or just like the winner. But I think this is an activity we thought would be really interesting for the annual conference, is to have this. It's sort of like our in between. Right now, we don't have an active user sort of community in terms of like a software solution, right? So it's not like built into Gen where like users can interact in a specific way. Definitely something we're thinking about, but we think this is sort of like can fill the gap between that, between sort of like where we are now and kind of moving in that direction. So anyway, the next couple of weeks, you might hear some more about it in our newsletter or ahead of the conference. But we'll have a really simple form. You can provide your idea or ideas. There's no limit, but hopefully we'll start to see some interesting use cases pop up from Gen users. So that's the idea. Is we just want people's feedback, and obviously for those who are willing to share some of the things they're using Gen for, we'd be happy to hear. So I think on the conference, that pretty much wraps up.
Josh, you're speaking. Well, tell us what you're going to be talking about at the conference. You're on one of the panels.
Oh, right. Well, that's true. So I'll be on a panel with some folks I really admire, and Jared Jascott being one of them. And we're talking about the basically use case, like prompt ideas, prompt engineering for immigration lawyers, which is kind of interesting. Obviously never spoken at AILA annual before, not an immigration lawyer. So it's definitely an interesting, it'll be interesting. I didn't realize that there were like these really involved practice advisories you had to complete beforehand, and it caught me by surprise a little bit.
Sucker.
I know. I got sucked in.
Yeah.
It's like, congratulations, by the way, here, submit a 5-page document.
Some homework.
So yeah, it's going to be really good. We're going to talk about some different use cases. It's going to be very engaging. In this panel, we're actually going to have the participants create a prompt around, basically we'll have like 3 pathways that everyone can choose between. There'll be immigration specific, use case specific, and so like basically, I don't know if we'll divide between like tables or how we're going to do it, but essentially, once we get in the room, we'll kind of understand what that will look like. And so, yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to see what the folks in the panel have to say. And of course, we'll hit all the high notes. We'll talk about ethics. High level, not jumping to in depth, like I'm sure ethics and AI conversations, like Greg, you probably had several of those already, maybe even today. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, that's what we'll be doing. I know you're speaking on at least one, or if not two panels.
I am, yeah, so I'm actually, I think I'm right after you, maybe. I'm on Wednesday afternoon.
Okay.
And my panel, there's a little AI in my panel, but I am probably going to be talking more. Our panel is covering case management systems.
Interesting.
And some of you may know, I do and Josh has worked with me on it, a case management report. That's a survey that we've done, I guess, 4 or 5 times already. I think this was the 5th time that we did it in January. And it's sort of we get about 300 law firms to participate in this report. And we really kind of dive deep into what people think is important, what's not. So I'll talk a little bit about that. One of the things that I'm looking forward to over the next year is how we bring AI especially through Gen, into some of the case management systems that are out there. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the panel as well. And I'm also speaking Tuesday at the AILA Global Migration Conference that happens. It's sort of the pre-conference that'll be there as well. So I get to be on a panel talking about what's happening AI-wise, not just in the U.S. legal market, but in other ones as well. So that's it's going to be an interesting week, and I know that, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of people. I'll be trying to spend as much time at the booth as I can as well. So I'll see people there. Looking forward to seeing you, Josh.
Absolutely.
Everybody else that's coming.
Yeah.
I think panel last week, and hopefully I'm not cutting out, but last week I did a panel for the ABA Center for Professional Responsibilities annual conference, and this is the country's ethics lawyers. There were about 500 of them, I'm guessing. It was a fairly large room of lawyers that are like state bar regulators, law professors, and private lawyers that represent people that get into trouble for legal ethics violations. And they had an AI panel, actually 2 AI panels on there, and I was on with Nikki Black and Jared Correa and Josh, another Josh, a lawyer from Michigan. But anyway, was on top of mine because that's a project that Josh Waddell, that I've been working on this ethics project as far as trying to get Gen and Sandbox, which is the new product we're working on, to have really strong ethics content, and you can ask it any kind of legal ethics questions and get a good answer. And I talked to a lot of the state bar regulators about this when I was there, and there was some excitement on there. This is something that they know a lot of lawyers will not pick up the phone and call when they have ethics questions. They have various psychological barriers to doing that, and tools like this are going to hopefully help make lawyers more likely to comply with the rules. So anyway, that's something that we have law clerks this summer helping us, and that's a project to really kind of build up the ethics content and have really strong prompts in order to be able to get those kind of answers. So that's what I did last week, and that's a project I hopefully have done over the course of the summer. But we're going to start testing it out with particular states, and hopefully have the whole country by the end of the summer.
Interesting. So we've had a couple of questions on here, something must have changed with StreamYard. We use StreamYard for all of our streaming, and previously up to this week, you could only get comments from YouTube. In other words, like, people can comment on the social platforms, but they don't populate in our sort of comment feed. But today they have been. So we've gotten several comments, some from Twitter and some from Greg, your LinkedIn account. I think Amelie had a question about interesting ethics questions. I can actually pop it up on the screen here.
Yeah, I mean, there were the ones that were coming up at the conference. I think the big issues are surrounding diligence, like how to make sure that lawyers who are using legal research tools or ChatGPT or whatever are not getting into trouble by by getting bad information and incorporating that somehow into pleadings and all that. Basically, this is sort of an issue that's been around since the beginning of lawyers using generative AI, and that
Oh, you're doing so
Did
good.
you lose me again?
You're back now.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, so there was that, and then a lot of it was there were a lot of interesting discussions surrounding confidentiality. And that's where products like Gen and CoCounsel and all that are really a necessity for lawyers. That they need to make sure that they're using tools where none of their data is training the language models or being reviewed by human examiners. So those were a couple of the issues that got lengthy discussions. One thing that was interesting is we were sort of the entree talking about AI generally and how lawyers are using it. The next panel were 4 of the top ethics lawyers in the country talking about this subject from the ethics lawyer's perspective, and they were talking to ethics lawyers, so they were really able to dive into the minutia of the rules and the case law in this area and what different states are doing on it. And that was really interesting because most of the presentations I've heard on ethics so far have been by lawyers who are not really ethics specialists. A few are, but several that are not. And this was interesting to sort of hear that level of discussion, which I hadn't heard on a panel yet.
Interesting. Thanks, Amelie, for the question.
Yeah.
We've been, I guess on the product side, this is something we've been talking about a lot too, not necessarily from the ethics standpoint, but it does sort of feel like the data security questions we've been getting related to AI, especially with some of the larger potential customers, the questionnaires, the sort of assessments, they've been really, I don't know like a better word, they're just like really beefed up. Like they're not the same as, they used to be like really involved, but now there's like a whole other addendum or page about how you use generative AI or language models. And I will say it's every potential customer has their own specific requirements, depending on the industry and the kinds of data they want to use, or they're just their own internal policies. But it does feel like there is a lot of effort right now, both from, I guess, a sort of government level standpoint and maybe state by state even, just like some standards. It seems like there's going to be, similar to how we have to pursue certain or choose to pursue certain compliance standards, either they're industry specific or just like various, acceptable standards, ISO, SOC certifications, things like that. I do think there are going to be increasingly a number of like AI based, whether they're certifications or audits or frameworks, like there's going to be more and more of that. And I think we really thought that we could just like invest super heavy in security at the beginning and do all these like really important, SOC 2 Type 2 or GDPR, HIPAA, like whatever that is that we felt like Gen really needed. Like these are things we're actually working on for Gen right now. But I think there's just going to be like a continuation of this, right? It's not gonna be like, we understand we've gotten to this point where we have, we've utilized a good framework. We know what the security specific, like, I think it's just going to be like another evolution in like AI, and how people like audit AI tools. And we're already thinking about it now. It's like people ask how, concepts around like data anonymization or, aggregate, all these, you're always talking about things like aggregate data and how it's utilized for training. And it's just like basically people are starting to ask these questions, even at like the vendor selection phase. So it seems like the industry's catching up pretty quick. And we're not talking about like tech companies. We're talking about just like, law firms, hospitals.
Yeah. The data aggregation was something that was discussed on a couple of different panels at that conference I was at last week. And, I think there's some concerns about patents and, the very proprietary data from one client somehow working its way into some of these tools, even with anonymization, which seems to be, something that some clients are wanting assurance that their data is not working its way into the system. So I expect to probably see more and more of that, where clients on the front end, especially in engagements and that sort of thing, are being really particular about how their data is used in drafting apps and other things that where there is that kind of blending that's going on, and it's I think it's going to raise some interesting questions for law firms on that are trying to build these products internally, and for and for clients too, who they don't want the data being used, but they still want the benefits of these products. It's going to create some interesting issues for them.
Interesting. Yeah, the patents, I guess, so anonymization, I'm always thinking about like personally identifiable information like names, addresses, numbers, the list goes on. But I guess with the it's like patents and some of this confidential, I guess it could just be like an idea, even a brand, things that you wouldn't initially like try to anonymize, or tools like some of these readily available anonymization packages and tools wouldn't really deal with well. That is an interesting idea. I thought about that.
Hey Josh, do I have the ability to share screen? I mean, it's a little dicey with the internet connection I have, but I did want to show a couple things in Gen that I was playing with today.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, let's see if I can make this work. So I think I do share screen. Here we go. So you can see my end screen.
Not yet. We might be running some more Wi-Fi, another Wi-Fi bump in the road, so to speak. I have an example too. I'd be happy to share. So, Greg, I think the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
All right. Yeah, I think it's just the Wi-Fi's dropping.
Right, am I back?
You're back now.
All right, I'm not going to try that again.
Yeah.
Okay.
I posted one of them on my LinkedIn today, that the president issued a big executive order.
Nope. And he's gone.
It's all right.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think he was just talking about the an executive order that was issued this morning. We might be able to even link the actual thing in his feed. So now you're back.
All right, I just entered Metro Nashville, so maybe my internet connection will be better. But the president issued this executive order this morning, covering a lot of stuff at the border. It's kind of been anticipated, and there have been a couple of news releases from back guys issued by Department of Homeland Security and by the White House. Anyway, that's all in Gen. But I just showed a quick example of like when there's breaking news on something in immigration, that what we're trying to do is to get that information into Gen immediately. So it's in there, and it was like literally within minutes of this information becoming available. It's now available for users in Gen to start playing with and asking questions. And we think for a lot of lawyers that's going to be super helpful, because even though they may be experts on immigration, they can't be experts on something that just came out 5 minutes ago on there. So that was something that was a good example use case when that information is posted in there quickly. The other thing that I was going to show, if I had an opportunity, and maybe I'll show it next week, is so Josh and I have been talking about working with our developers and making each cookbook chapter available separately in the document Q&A, the personal libraries for lawyers, so that they could do a lot more creative prompting with that material. Right now, when it's in the main library, it's fine, but it's sort of like that's a research. The prompts are designed for legal research, not necessarily for drafting and such. So I've been experimenting with our DACA chapter, which is about 150 pages that we have in there. And the first thing I asked it was come up with 20 ideas for things for prompts that I could develop or use cases for this material. And it did a really nice job of that. And then I started picking those examples. So one of them was on there. I'm trying to see where I can see it on mine. I'm not going to try and share it again. But like, for example, draft a step-by-step guide for clients seeking to renew their DACA, emphasizing the documents listed, documents needed for renewal. Create hypothetical scenarios where specific documents from the list would be crucial in improving eligibility for DACA. It had one on, outline how to prepare a DACA applicant for a potential interview, including what documents to bring and how to present the case. And I just asked it to give me 20, and obviously does it instantaneously. But what I'm hoping to do is, once those chapters are all in all the libraries, is to develop dozens and dozens of prompts for each chapter that people would have access to. Josh and I have also been working on this concept of quick prompts, where you don't necessarily have to think about what you want it to do. A lot of times people are not really sure what to do with the with the tool, and we want to make it super easy for people to think about that. So what we'll have is sort of like just a whole library of prompts that are tied to specific documents that we're going to have by default in the document Q&A section. So look for that later on this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think one of the challenges with this technology is like we built the thing. Now we have to sort of fill in all the gaps, right, of talking about like how to make this super easy for an attorney to use to see all the various use cases that are applicable to them, whether they're like templates. So when they create an account, it's like based on their practice area. We like kind of fleshing out the best way to, right now they're just tools. Right now they're features. They're, it's flashy AI tech, and you can go in and click the box or click the thing and, kind of, make your own path, do your own customizations. But what we want is to make it very catered to people. So lawyers don't have to think about, oh, what kind of prompt do I have to create to do this thing? It's like, no, I know we've talked about this idea a lot, and the reality is, it's like just like building the product itself and building out the code and making sure that the product's running and all that. So from a technical side, it's the use cases and the content that we're adding, that's like equally challenging. So it's just taking a while for us to really think through. I mean, we're talking about like all of U.S. immigration law. There's just so much to flesh out there. I mean, it'll likely take us several months and years to really kind of build out these. There will be, on the short term, there's going to be a lot of value immediately added to the product. But I guess what I'm saying is like this very customized, easy, interactive thing where it's going to immediately point you to, not having to click all the prompts and the documents, be like, I just want to analyze an RFE. I just want to create this type of document. I just want to do this thing. And so that's the direction I think we're definitely, we're pushing. We're like definitely going in down that path. Just, we're a step at a time, I guess. But I have something I can share. So I don't know how visible this is or how big this is, so it's probably gonna be hard to see certain aspects of it.
I made a full screen for everyone, so it should be a little easier.
Awesome. So I wanted to explain sort of the evolution of Gen 2 because it's been about 5 months since the product was first released till now, and I will say I've been really happy. I mean, the one thing we've always wanted is like very transparent feedback about the product. And one of the components we received, even with some of these early use case videos we made like 5 months ago, right? A lot of times it would be like, well, an answer it's not wrong, but it's not right, if that makes sense. So it's definitely moving in the right direction, but there's some key piece of evidence or piece of information that's missing here that would really make this a really valuable answer for an attorney, right? So one example of this is what we call an eligibility analysis question. So this is a citizenship at birth question. And the question is a child born on January 1, 1980 outside of the U.S. to a U.S. citizen father and foreign national mother, the father lived in the U.S. continuously after the age of 10, are they a citizen at birth? And in my initial video months ago, it kind of paints the picture of, if these certain things are met, yes, then they are a citizen at birth. But what a user told me in feedback is, this really isn't. It's incorrect because it's not fully correct, right? So basically what they were pointing out is that it's all based on, one of the main scenarios here, fact patterns, is like the father's age, right? So basically in the initial response that we received in Gen, I guess this would have been GPT 3.5 with some of our initial data sets at that time, which have grown tremendously. It didn't really paint that picture of like the different sort of scenarios based on the father's age. Well, I ran the same question in Gen this week, and basically the answer was a much richer response. Now, I will say, just to give full transparency, I did add another sentence in the prompt that said, be concise and give different scenarios, right? So, a lot of this does come down to, hey, let's ask the question correctly. And one of the things we've been doing as well is trying to think through how to help users craft better questions, like validate questions. And I think we're getting closer to having that kind of functionality. But for right now, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I basically just tacked on this extra little sentence that says, hey, be concise. Tell me what this means. So essentially what they painted is like this picture of, if the father was in the U.S. Continuously from age 10 to age 20, then it would have met the requirement, right? So this is really helpful for an attorney, right? Because they can because it's kind of like, I don't know if you think about like some of the immigration books, or even like Herzban, I guess, is like they have the charts, right? Like you open up the page and you see all the charts, you kind of follow the charts. Well, this is basically doing that in just a text-based response in Gen. This is, I guess what I was just trying to show you is like the product has evolved, not just because of the content, but also just because of the technology, because the language models are better. It's giving much richer responses. And of course, like we mentioned, the content is always being updated to the most recent, the most relevant material. And again, so I just kind of wanted to give you a picture of maybe just an example of something, right? And because we take user feedback to heart. So someone leaving that, and whoever that was anonymously, leaving that message, we made sure we could figure out like what was happening either on the content side or on the product side to figure out how to, resolve that in future, moving forward. So just like I just wanted to kind of explain, even though Gen from a UI standpoint, from just sort of how the product works, it feels very similar as it always has, but there has been an improvement in terms of the quality of the output. I think our team, obviously we're a little biased to that, but I think even our users would say something similar. So,
I did learn something interesting from one of the co-panelists of the program that I did last week that I think is going to help. So about I've talked to you guys about this white whale prompt that I've been trying for over a year, and it always is it never quite works. But this is the one where I can put in a list. It's a kind of a dummy list of clients that nationalities and product dates and visa categories, and I wanted to check the visa bulletin and make a chart for me on who's current and who's not, both for the filing date chart and the final action date chart. And it will always be mostly right, like 95% right, and then it will.
Nope.
Cliffhanger.
I know, as you say, it'll be mostly right, and
All right, am I back? Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, sorry. So this technique that this friend who was on the panel with me said he had something similar. He's a lawyer in Michigan, and he added language to the prompt, instructing it to go back and double check the work after it laid before it presented the response. Go back and double check and take a second pass at it and see if everything looks right. And it's like, does that really work? And he said, yes, it really works. Sometimes he also pits different language models against each other. So it's something I might try in private GPT, but use some of the language that he has, because that's actually going out and they're doing internet queries there. But I'm going to try that and see if it works. But it's sort of an interesting way to cut down on sort of mini hallucinations where something is mostly right but is still making mistakes. And math seems to be, one area that it's a classic area where it's not been great. But that's something that I'm interested in seeing if I can solve some of the issues there. But Josh, I also think that what you just laid out, where you're doing date calculations based on, a date of birth and all that we might try for some of those to use to try that technique to see if that also will help to reduce any issues.
Right. Yeah, and maybe it'll just take time for people to. Obviously, the only way to really check the calculations is to check the calculations, but to validate them at this point, would be to just reviewing. Same with some of the output that you get in research tools is you kind of want to look at the source material and see what it is. But I think over time, as I don't know, they mentioned some of the newer models should be, very good at mathematical calculations and things like that. So, I think it might just take some time for people to feel more confident. Like you said, really, it's not about the AI being able to do math. It's just more about not hallucinating and finding with the citizenship at birth, it's got to find the right little box in the grid of all the little citizenship at birth scenario, fact patterns and scenarios, and it's just got to be able to find the exact one.
It still has to see that the date that you plugged into your question is later than or earlier than, and it's kind of a similar issue to this Visa Bulletin one, where it sees a date in the chart and it sees a date that's in the prompt, and it's usually able to figure it out, but somehow every once in a while it makes an error on that. So this second pass at it before it returns the answer, I have a feeling it's going to solve that issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, I'm only asked about temperature too and temperature settings, and our legal research prompts have always been 0, right? We've always been 0.0 on the on the temperature setting, or 0.1. I don't know if you can actually, I guess you can actually go to 0, but 0.1.
And the same thing too, of that's, depending on the prompting and stuff too, we even have it be adjustable so that the users themselves can adjust if they have, a more creative task versus a legal one. Obviously, we set the legal one to that, but once they go into the actual prompting, they want to do, a social media message or something, feel free to go, raise that temperature. But
right. So I guess if I'm in here, if I'm in Gen and I'm going prompt library, right? I have things dialed down to, in our system, it can be 0.0, but I guess I don't know how it's sort of actually configured on the OpenAI side. And then in the prompt library, right? I could go in here, you can modify, like you're saying, you can customize the temperature setting on any of the custom prompts or system prompts that are created. So yeah, it's very customized, but yeah, I don't know. We've had I guess the results it does impact the result a fair amount, but we've just always leaned into taking it the most literal, I guess, path, if you will.
Trying to limit hallucinations as much as possible, and if it doesn't know the answer, telling you it doesn't have a good response to it has always been part of that as well.
Right.
Yeah, ultimately, you need to check the citations always on there, and that's why they're there on there. They're there just so you can do further research, but also they're there because it is math. It's basically algorithmic calculations that are happening as far as deciding what's the next word that it's going to do, and it will never be 100%. In any models that tell you that they can completely eliminate hallucinations, I kind of also don't like the terminology hallucinations on there, because it makes it sound like it's on LSD and it's really going wild on there. And it may very well be that it's sort of mostly right and gets the nuance of something wrong on there, and it's not really, and it's still a very useful answer that you're getting, but you are, but you're, and I'm telling people to sort of think of it as assigning a task to a junior lawyer or a paralegal that happens to be very smart. You are not going to basically just take whatever they give you without doing any review and passing it on, or maybe some of you will, but and that's not a great idea. But it's sort of the same thing, which is that it'll save you a ton of time. It will generally do the job most of the time, but you still have to be the lawyer and you still have to do your diligence and make sure that the information checks with the citations on there. So that's just always good practice, and it's also you're ethically obligated to do that, to comply with the ethics rules on there. So it's not even a question of, even if it was right most of the time, all the time, you still would have to do that review under the ethics rules. So you can't bypass that, no matter how we get down to zero hallucinations. At some point, you're still going to have to go through that exercise.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Can't get away from that ethical requirements and the law.
Somebody asked a question about the prompt that I had about the by the executive act.
Yeah.
Question, but I will say that there is some talk about some more stuff coming on legal pathways for people. What came this morning was all about basically stopping, sealing up the border. Some of the press releases talked a little bit about legal pathways, but they were just basically talking about things that were already there. The big one I've heard is potentially allowing people to apply for employment authorization or parole in place if they are married to a U.S. citizen in the U.S. And right now, that process of getting a waiver of the 10-year bar is taking like 4 years or so. We're litigating on that issue, but I think we might see some additional stuff in the next few days, but I don't have inside information on that other than just some discussions that I know have been taking place regarding some potential additional actions focusing on populations that are deemed to be, priority. So keep an eye out, probably in the next few days.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, Amelie is Josh. I know. I don't know if you've seen the article that she's linking to, but this is the one that was benchmarking some of the legal research programs. Lexis, Westlaw, Practical Law, which is owned by West, and ChatGPT, I think, were there, and there was some controversy because the Westlaw model performs really poorly. I mean, not like they claim that there was about a 1/3 hallucination rate, which is very high on there. Lexis did a lot better. They didn't do co-counsel, and I think there was something in the article that said that they didn't have permission.
Right.
That happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So to be fair to West, that's sort of their main play at the future is co-counsel. That's why they paid all that money for them. I've been using co-counsel for, about since November 2022. I think I started using it, and as a tester initially, and it's a great product, and you get good answers most of the time on there. And even if the answer is not perfect, the cases that it returns and the summaries of the cases and all that are super helpful. So I feel like the article should have had should have covered that. But I don't know what the maybe if they do a revision of it, it'll be in there. But hopefully, I will say as far as Jen goes, we kind of went through similar testing internally beforehand. We had this list of baseline questions. And Josh, I know you've been playing with.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have about 15 minutes until we arrive at our destination.
He's getting close.
There. Yeah, I mean, I think the article achieved its, I think one of the main agendas behind the article is to sort of, and we've never claimed that our product is hallucination free.
No.
That has never been anything we've ever said. And I think fundamentally the agenda of the article, I think, was to tell these companies like, hey, you can't tell people that your product is going to get the right answer every time.
Right.
And I think in that sense, it worked. It's successful. I think that the sort of fundamental question is, how how do you grade AI tools on like truthfulness? It's like it's a very challenging thing. We have the same thing, like you say. There's statistical analysis that people are talking about they're doing on these AI models and things like that. But really, we're just talking about creating what we internally do as a baseline. It was not actually that much different than how the Stanford team did it. We have a grading system that's zero. We don't just say it's right or wrong. An answer can actually be halfway right. So we have zero. Zero is completely wrong. One is complete. Is graded by an attorney that's a successful output. That's a good answer. 0.5 is it's in the right direction, but it's not complete. Which we see that typically in our product, because we're tapping into existing content. That's what, in terms of right and wrong, it's usually somewhere in the middle. That's really the challenge. Is a lot of the outputs we get are like, yes, it's so in Stanford. I mean, I guess from their perspective, that would be completely wrong because it's not completely right. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of room for sort of interpretation, and it requires more standards, I think, to be created around how you can actually specifically evaluate legal research products. But I think it served its purpose in the sense of, yes, maybe we'll stop seeing people saying that their products are like perfect.
There's been a few in the legal space that have said that, but I mean, with that said, I was just mentioning that we have been testing GPT-4o on there, and right now, so at least initially, and we'll see how we make changes to the prompt, and but right now 4 Turbo is still doing a better job than 4o, so we're not going to deploy that in the research library yet, although we've talked about maybe deploying it in the in private GPT or in document Q&A. And Josh, one of the things that we can potentially talk with our development folks is the option potentially to pick your LLM that it uses. Like you are, if you're in ChatGPT right now, you can say whether you want to use 4 Turbo or 4o on there, and that may be something for some of the tools that we can let the user have some flexibility in which models being used.
Yeah, I think we'll eventually have a multi-model approach. I mean, again, I think they're, the tools will all be, I think right now what we found is with the API available, like the sort of connection options we have, it makes more sense to just kind of go all in with a single model, and OpenAI just seems to be doing a better job when it comes to robust integrations, really being able to tap into the models. The others are still kind of, I think, playing catch up on that regard. I think Anthropic's doing a pretty good job.
Claude's doing
we'll probably be able to connect with them relatively soon. But I think right now it seems like certain models do certain things better than others, and sort of holistically though, I think if we're just going to grade it from our perspective, it's like what model would give you this sort of full package. It still feels like OpenAI for our needs makes the most sense. But you're right. GPT-4o, we've had some challenges. I don't know how you say, kind of reining it in, like on hallucinating. So we've been, GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo, generally, like if we have we're going to have to update our prompts because our prompts don't seem to be working in the way that they worked with GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo, because we can ask, generally, so when you go into Gen, you ask a question that's out of scope of immigration law. So is the sky blue? What's the capital of Tennessee? Anything. It should say, I'm not able to answer that question because it's outside the scope of what I've been basically instructed to do as an immigration assistant. So it should say, I can't answer that. With GPT-4o, we've been having a harder time getting it to stay within the bounds of immigration law. Even though the prompting and all of this structure and all of that is exactly the same. We'll see what happens. I mean, I think we're still testing it. It might just be some modifying of some of the things we're doing on the back end with some of the prompts. It was a recent discovery, though. Initially, the output from GPT-4o was very impressive in terms of, as long as you're asking in-scope questions, the output seems to be really, really good. But it seems to want to, the temperature setting, the back end, it seems to still want to kind of wonder a little bit. So we'll keep you posted on that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And I think GPT-4o's purpose in terms of what they were really hoping with voice and the sort of more robust model, I think it's definitely really good at some of those things. We're really interested and excited about how that could play into our products in the future with like
accessibility aspects.
translation, word for word type stuff, voice activated question and answer.
We have on our roadmap to have a mobile version of Gen available, and I think once that's available, it's going to become even more compelling to have some of that functionality from 4.0, like on the fly translation. You just throw your phone into the in the middle of your desk with the client, and having the ability to have a back and forth conversation with that close to real time translation, and being able to do it in a way where none of the data is shared with OpenAI, so that the information, so that you're complying with confidentiality, which I don't think you can do right now with 4.0 just in there. I don't think you can shut off the sharing for voice and video. I'm not positive on that, but it's still an issue. Anyway, that's, I think, something that I'm going to say when
Right.
we have that kind of capability.
Yeah, it does seem like from the business setting, the B2B setting, whoever is winning. I mean, obviously there's the winning of the models themselves, right? And that's why these companies are fighting. The chips, the server space, the capacity, the
output,
the training of models, but the security battle is also real. So I mean, I think whoever can say that they have the most robust. I mean, from the B2B perspective, I think that's an equally important thing, right? So I think we'll start to see. It does seem like some of the companies are really, at least saying they're beefing up that part of their company. So anyway, we're really excited for a lot of those things. I think on the mobile friendly aspect of it, we still have there's a small fix we need to make around. We have an unauthorized practice of law UPL statement that people have to click through before they get to the actual product, and we just need to modify it so people can actually so it works on a mobile device, because right now I think it's sort of like, I don't know, for whatever reason it seems challenging to click that little button. Life of having the constant improvement, the life cycle thing. But anyway, we'll get it fixed, and we think the mobile friendly aspect of the product will be good. But anyway, I think I don't have anything else for today. We've talked about, it's been a huge spectrum of conversation topics.
Hopefully people will stop by next week and say hello in person.
Yeah, I was gonna say we probably won't have a live stream next week, or if we do, it'll be from the conference. So
I think maybe we'll do it at the booth.
At our booth, that'll be fun. Yeah. Have everyone in person.
Yeah, maybe we'll make it happen maybe Thursday instead of Tuesday next week, because Tuesday is sort of a travel day. Everyone's going to be traveling to Chicago, but I think maybe Thursday we can do. Yeah, it'd be fun in the booth live stream. Maybe have some attorneys, immigration attorneys on the spot, ask Jen some questions.
There you go.
Anyway, no.
All right.
Thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.